Today's podcast comes at a good time for me because I'm moving to a new house in the next couple of weeks, and I'm just really keen to avoid more stuff. I've always thought that the more simple life is, and the more that I can simplify my life, the more headspace that there is for everything else, and generally the more happier that I am. Hi, welcome back to Zestology. It's a podcast about energy and vitality, and often about living a natural life, and I suppose a life based on experiences instead of stuff. More experiences, less stuff. That'll do me okay. And therefore Bea Johnson comes at a great time in terms of being a guest. She's all about zero waste living. She's a big guest on Zestology. Really pleased that she's agreed to come on. As I say, she comes at a really good time for me because we've been renovating a house. We're going to move in the next couple of weeks. We're excited about doing that. And her thing is all about less stuff, more experiences, more simplicity, definitely helping the environment, and without a doubt, more energy for the things that matter. Oh, and one more thing, saving money as well, which is a really nice byproduct of this approach, and one that I'm definitely down with at the moment because it's costing quite a lot moving house. So, if you think waste-free living is depriving or time-consuming or costly or simply reserved for hermits living in the countryside, then I think you'll enjoy today's podcast. And when you get away from stuff, you come towards the things that really matter. You know, I'm strolling around West London at the moment recording this podcast. It's a nice sunny summer day, and you know, I've got to say the simple things like kind of basking in a little bit of sunlight are the things that are really important in life, not necessarily a new coffee maker. Although I am quite obsessed with a new coffee maker at the moment. I'm also obsessed with a new rucksack. As you'll hear in this podcast, I talked to Bea about the fact that actually probably not going to improve my life that much if I get that new rucksack or not. So she's got a blog, and then she wrote a best-selling book, which is huge. She has spoken at most of the world's major corporations, as you'll hear. She's been published in almost 30 languages. She's got a lot of followers on Instagram and Twitter and all the rest. She had a huge dilemma over to whether to write a book or not. Thing is that her whole thing is zero waste living. So she doesn't even like receipts or stamps because they're paper. I mean, you know, she's quite hardcore, Bea Johnson, as you'll hear. But bearing that in mind, the real dilemma in her mind was, should she write a book or not? And she decided to get her message out there. And, well, I suppose today on Zestology you can join hundreds of thousands of others in enjoying a richer life that is based on experiences and just a little bit less stuff. Because it is so easy as well, isn't it? You know, you pop on Amazon, get yourself something delivered to your door. We've now got Ocado Zoom near us as well, which I realise makes me sound very middle class, but you can basically get your groceries and anything else delivered in a 1 hour time slot. Worryingly addictive, and it's just all a bit easy, isn't it? It's easy to accumulate stuff. So here she is, Bea Johnson, on zero waste living and your zero waste home, and Bea Johnson is on Zestology. I've been enjoying your book. There's some bits that really make me laugh. That the image of you turning up at I think it's the baker's with a pillowcase to take your bread home. It's just so good.
Well, it's only because you know it's a pillowcase. You know, if a pillowcase in the end is just a fabric bag, so it's no big deal.
One of the really nice things about the book is you say, look, you know, I'm really into this stuff, but I try not to be too hardcore about it.
Yeah, because you know, and I have to say, because there were, you know, when we got started, there were no books, no blogs, no guide on how to do this. We did have to test a lot of extremes to figure out what worked for us and what did not. And one point I did go a little bit overboard. I got too wrapped up into homemaking. I was making my own bread, my own cheese, my own butter, my own soy milk. But then eventually when I found, for example, that I could bring my own pillowcase to the bakery, then I didn't have to make my own bread. And in the end, they make bread much better than I do. And then I realized I can bring my own jar to the cheese counter. Again, they make cheese much better than I do. So little by little, we were able to eliminate all the extremes and find a balance that we could stick to in the long run.
It's about kind of simplifying, really, isn't it? And that really appeals to me. I always think, I've got too much going on, too many things to think about. If I can have a few less things to think about, that's quite nice.
Exactly. And I think, a lot of people are afraid of the term zero waste because it sounds so extreme, and they think, it's got to be so different from what I do that I just don't have time for that. But the zero waste lifestyle is all about living simply. And actually, zero waste becomes a lifestyle when you let it simplify your life, not complicate it.
Yeah. And in the book, you talk about how you grew up in France and then you moved to America, and you almost found yourself pursuing the American soccer mom dream. But you say in France, actually, with your upbringing, people are very good at kind of finding uses for things, and that was it your dad who was especially good at that?
Yeah, and I think in countrysides in general, people that are kind of far away from amenities or stores, malls, they tend to make do with what they have, whether it be in their home or whatever is presented for free on the street or whatever the neighbor can provide. It's just you become much more resourceful. And indeed, my dad could not pass up a broken TV on the side of the street or a broken vacuum cleaner, so he would pick it up, and that's how we ended up with, in a household of 5 people, with I think five different TV sets. And it's just he's really good at repairing things, and it very much in the end it's extending the useful life of the items that we do have. So and that's not, of course, not something that I really thought about growing up, but it's only once I started adopting a zero waste lifestyle that upbringing kind of started making sense to me. They say you always go back to your roots, basics of what you've been taught, and it's definitely the case here.
Well, and it's come at a very good time for me because I'm actually moving into a new house in 5 or 6 weeks' time. And of course we need to decorate it, so I'm kind of making notes as we go along here, and perhaps you could talk a little bit more about how you did get into it, because obviously you found yourself living the American soccer mom lifestyle. What changed, and how did you become this incredibly successful author, because you've won awards as well, I think?
Yeah, and it's so what happened is that in 2006 we were living deep in the suburbs of San Francisco, but our house was located on a cul-de-sac. We had to drive to go to grocery stores, schools, restaurants, and prior to that we had lived in big cities. We had lived in London, Paris, Amsterdam, where we were used to walking and biking everywhere. So that life deep in the suburbs kind of bothered me that I just felt so tied to the car. And I missed that life that we had known in the big cities we had lived in, and being able to walk to things. So we decided to relocate to be closer to a town and to have those amenities within walking or biking distance. But before finding the right house, we rented an apartment for 1 year, and we only moved in with the necessities. We put the rest in storage. And it's during that year that we discovered that when you have less, then you have more time to spend with your family, with friends, picnics, go on hikes. And ultimately, it's thanks to that. Ultimately, we found the right house. We got everything out of storage, and we found that 80% of the stuff that we had put in there, we hadn't even missed for a whole year. So we let go of them. And it's also thanks to that simplicity that we found time to read books and watch documentaries on environmental issues, which made my husband and I reflect on our consumption habits. They kind of made my husband and I sat thinking about the future that we as parents were creating for our children and the future we were going to leave behind for them. So that's what motivated us to change our ways. So at first we watched our energy consumption, water consumption, and then I started questioning our trash. And in trying to find ways to reduce it, I had to I picked up the phone, called my mom, my mother-in-law, my grandmother, like, hey, how the heck did you guys do before? And also I Googled a lot of alternatives, and one day I stumbled upon the term zero waste, which back then was a term used to describe manufacturing practices or municipal waste management, but it was not a term used to describe something you do at home. But yet when I saw that term, the light bulb went off in my head and it gave me a goal. But again, there were no books, no blogs, no guide on how to do that. So we had to test a lot of things, tested, basically alternatives to find alternatives that we could stick to in the long run for life. And that's when zero waste became a lifestyle. So then I shared it on a blog, which then got picked up by the New York Times and then through media throughout the world. And in showing that we were not hippies, as people might maybe think we would be, but that we lived a normal, modern, but simple life. It gave a face to the lifestyle, or to the zero waste lifestyle, and it initiated a global movement. A lot of people saw how we lived, and they were like, "Wow, if that's what zero waste looks like, I want to do zero waste." So from then, I then wrote a book, which is now translated into 26 languages. And in Zero Waste Home, I really share our path, our journey, but also everything we know about the zero waste lifestyle. It's that's why people call it the Bible of zero waste.
Well, congratulations, by the way, on being translated into all those languages and inspiring people. And as I say, I am reading your book at the moment, and I'm really enjoying it. And I think so. The kind of message is: look, you're helping the environment, which is the first thing. Then you're helping yourself because you're simplifying your life and you're saving money as well. And I think that sometimes the theory is better than the practice. So I thought, a real world example for you. I've got a rucksack which is 5 years old, or actually probably about 8 years old, and it works perfectly fine. It smells a bit. And it's a bit old and a couple of the zips are broken, but it works fine. And I've seen a new rucksack advertised on Instagram. It's very expensive. And part of me really wants that. And then I was thinking about this today, having read your book. I was thinking, I don't need the new rucksack because the old, slightly smelly one works perfectly fine. In the zero waste lifestyle, should I be not looking at the Instagram pictures of the new rucksack, but just sticking with the smelly one?
Well, I don't know how far you are along in my book, but I do mention that it's very important when you simplify your life to curb your exposure to advertisement. And social media is a form of advertisement, and it's becoming more and more, of course. I mean, I personally am pounded every day with companies that are that would love for me to put their products, and I refuse to do that. I want to stay unsponsored and to keep my content true and to the point, and not be not be selling myself basically, or selling my ethics just to sell their products that or products that I don't really support. This consumer society in the end was created by manufacturers who hired powerful marketers to create in us fictitious needs. And, as soon as you adopt a zero waste lifestyle, as soon as you adopt a simple life and, turn off cable or cancel your catalog subscriptions or your magazine subscriptions, then all of a sudden you are really curbing your exposure to all the marketing, and then you'll find that you're actually happy with what you have. No longer are fictitious needs created, for you, and in the end, you do feel a sense of happiness and of freedom, and there is like a weight that's lifted off your shoulders, and it's almost like you also feel, especially around Christmas time. Actually, I feel like I'm walking around like with like I have a secret, and I have found. An alternative lifestyle that is so much richer than the one before, that you basically, it's funny, you walk around Christmas time, you watch people like having, long faces, being depressed, and they're stressed, and they're not, this is marketed as the happiest time of the year.
Yeah.
But if you look at people's faces, they don't show that. I mean, their faces look quite distressed around that time. And, but if you curb your consumption, you don't, you're not playing. You're not, fitting into that crazy consumption kind of down spiral that they want you to be part of. And so it's definitely liberating to live simply and to pay attention to how much marketing you're really exposing yourself to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're right. Because I haven't read that part of your book, but you're right, because that was an Instagram advert that first showed me that. I'd obviously been Googling rucksacks or something, and it showed up. But isn't it powerful?
Yeah, those ads are literally built to make you feel like you're not young enough, you're not trendy enough, you're not cool enough, you don't have what you need to be cool, young, and successful. It's just And once you stop all that, then you actually are those things. You feel energized, you do feel young, you do feel successful, and you do feel cool, because you have adopted a life that allows you to be all of that.
Yeah.
Living simply does not deprive one life. It's actually the complete opposite. It makes room in your life for what matters most to you. So whether it be your family, your friends, your following your dreams, or following a career, or studying, or taking on a hobby, or pushing it further, it's really living simply that allows you to do that. It's not buying more stuff that will get you there.
And so that's more about experiences than things, which I've always thought is a very good way of living. And
exactly, and that's really the best advantage of this lifestyle. This lifestyle is not just good for the environment. We found that it saves. Not only does it make us healthier, but it's also we found that it saves us a huge amount of money, 40% on our overall budget. But best of all, it's translated into a simple life that is based on experiences instead of things. It's a life that's based on being instead of having. And that to us is what makes life richer.
And maybe we can come on to a couple of the things that you recommend people do. But just before that, I have this image of kind of turning up at your house, your new house, and there being kind of cavernous empty rooms and nothing in there. What's it like in your house?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I have to say we are extreme minimalists, but it's by choice. Of course, you don't have to be as extreme as we are. It's just that to me, the more I let go, the freer and richer I felt inside. So I've really gone to really ask myself for every single thing that we had in the house, including every single item in a quote junk drawer.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I've really cleansed the house to the max. I have 15 pieces of clothing, and people will tend to think, oh boy, I mean that sounds depriving. No, it's actually the opposite. I'm actually a fashion graduate. I studied at the London College of Fashion, and and in the end, having less does not mean that I have less options, because the few items that I do have, I've picked them very specifically so that they're multifunctional, and that wardrobe of 15 pieces allows me to create more than 50 looks. I've shown it on the blog, and it's not depriving. To me, it's the opposite. It's completely freeing. When I have to pack for a trip, I no longer have to ask myself, boy, what should I pack? Because I can just pack it all. It all fits in a carry-on.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so the first kind of thing that you tell people to do is not kind of getting as far as recycling, but it's refusing stuff, isn't it? If you get offered stuff you don't need, or if you don't need it, just refusing it.
Exactly. So, when we started this, we had heard about the reduce, reuse, recycle mantra, but it became clear to us very quickly that society was putting way too much emphasis on recycling, barely on reusing, especially 12 years ago when we started, and even less, on reducing. And so, when we adopted this lifestyle, we found out that we could get pretty close to zero if we actually followed those 3 R's in order. Reduce as much as you can, you'll have less to reuse, and if you reuse as much as you can, you'll have even less to recycle.
Yeah.
But it also became evident that no matter how much we reduced, reused, and recycled, there was still stuff coming into our house, whether it be from junk mail that the postman is putting in our mailbox, or the plastic sleeve that was delivered from the laundry, what do you call it, the cleaners,
dry cleaner.
The dry cleaner, or people coming to your house with a box filled with pastries individually wrapped, or whether it is you go to a conference and they try to give you samples or swag bags or a plastic pen, or you go to the grocery store and they'll give you a plastic bag. You go to a restaurant, they give you a straw. But the thing is, every time you accept those things, you are creating a demand to make more. Accepting is a way of consuming. Every time you accept one of those things, you are literally saying, please draw more oil from the ground to create a replacement. And a replacement will be created. Or cut more trees to create more paper and more flyers. And more flyers, of course, are created. So when you learn to say no to these things on the spot, you not only stop the demand to make more, but you also stop these things from coming into your home and then becoming your trash problem down the line. So so the first rule that we added to the 3 R's was refuse, to refuse what we do not need. So we've simply learned to say no. So I would encourage people to think about that. Next time someone tries to give them something, instead of reaching out to grab it, because today we've become almost robots in reaching out when someone is trying to hand out something to us, to just take a split second, to ask yourself, okay, do I really need this? Because if I actually take it, it does have an effect. So if you learn to say no on the spot, you'll be amazed to see how much stuff you can stop from coming into your home.
Yeah, and then you cover lots of other areas that things people can focus on, including, of course, recycling. And you say often, when you said you were writing the book and you were doing the blog and stuff, people said, oh yes, I love recycling. But actually, one of the things I learned from your book is that often when we recycle, what is recycled is then not recyclable after that. Is that right?
Well, yeah, the problem is, with my 5 R's, and so, by the way, the last one is rot, and maybe we'll talk about that later, but the 5 R's are refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. Rot meaning composting. The beauty of my methodology is that if you apply those 5 R's in order, you really are left with very little recycling, very little composting. The first 3 R's are the ones that allow you to have control over your consumption, over the items that are coming into your home. Once you put something on the curb, it's completely out of your control. You have no idea what's going to happen to it. Once you put it into a bin, will it be recycled? Well, only if there is a market for it. And sometimes there isn't, or sometimes markets change. For example, last year, China announced that they were banning, they were putting in some rules, some very strict rules, because they were tired of, getting, for example, Americans' plastic filled with trash, and it was just contaminated, and they just got tired of getting all our trash over there. So they said, okay, stop, we don't want that anymore. If you're going to send us your plastics, we want them to be very clean, very well separated, with very, very low rates of contamination. And I just read recently, I think they only recycle recycled 1% this year from the previous year. So that ban is they're not joking. I mean, they're being very strict about it. And so that means that, before the US was just sending, all their plastics over there, but now we can do that. So maybe there was a market before, but we don't even know what happened over there with the plastics. Obviously, because it was contaminated, a lot of it had to be landfilled in China. And so now it's a lot of municipalities are just sending all those recyclables to the landfill because it's just way too costly to actually recycle them. So that's the beauty of the 5 R's, is that if you really refuse, reduce, and reuse as much as you can, then you have very little recycling left, and you don't have to worry about what would happen to your materials if you did put them in a recycling bin.
And do you really, once you do this, do you really feel lighter and kind of freer?
I mean, I think people picture me as someone that sits at home and worries about my trash all day and works all day on making products from scratch in order to eliminate trash. That's not the case at all. I mean, because of that simple life, and because we've eliminated all those items that take up time and for no reason. It just opens time to focus on what matters most to you. So in the end, my life now is my work is more focused. I have time to volunteer. I have more time for friends, more time for family, more times for activities and experiences with my family. Just to give you just one example. In the past, we were buying paper towels, right? Like a lot of people buy paper towels.
Yes.
But in order to buy the paper towels, you have to go to the store, and typically it's packed in, it's a big pack. So you typically need a car to bring it home. It will take half your trunk. Well, especially with the packs of, the sizes of the packs that they sell in the US where I live. And then once you bring it home, you have to store it. And in our case, just to bring it to the front door, we'd have to carry it 36 steps, and then we'd have to store it. It would take, a whole shelf just to store it. Then once we've used it, we would have had to separate the plastic from the paper, from the cardboard, if we wanted to separate it, sort it right. Then we'd have to, put all those items in plastic bags or in trash bags, which we would have also purchased, to then take it all the way back down 36 steps to put it on the curb for the trash company to take these things, away, and then we'd have to go back to the store to buy more.
Right. Now, and what do you do instead?
This is one example amongst hundreds of products that we've eliminated in our house. We've swapped the paper towels for rags. So the rags, we just throw them in the wash. And of course, when you use rags, you're not using them like paper towels. Paper towels, you use them only once. A rag, you're just going to use it, you rinse it, you use it again. I mean, we use about 2 to 3 rags a week, and we just throw it with our, regular clothes. And so it's just, it's just super simple. It stays in the house. There is no hauling down, or there is no traveling to the store and then back and then hauling up and down the stairs. It just eliminates all that. So when you eliminate all disposables, not only does it save time not having to deal with them, but also obviously money not having to buy those things. And that's money that you can actually spend doing something more important, going on a trip or doing activities with your family.
I must admit, the final R, you mentioned rot there. I was reading, you have a kind of a table of the different ways that you can rot. It's basically composting, isn't it? And,
yes.
and I like the idea. And obviously I told you I'm moving into a new house in 6 weeks. It'd be perfect to put it into practice. But I looked at the table and I thought, I don't know where to start here. It all looks a bit confusing.
Well, then tell me, what are you going to be in an apartment or are you going to be in a house?
It's going to be a house with a small garden.
Well, if you have a garden, you have a few options. You have, does it get cold?
Well, we're in London, so it does get pretty cold at times. Cold. But yeah.
And for that, probably the best one it would be, if you have, because it gets cold, do you have a garage?
Yeah. Well, we can create? I don't have a garage as such, but why is it, are you thinking about worms? They don't like being outside.
Yeah, the worms are. I love worm composting because it is such. It's so representative of the cycle of life, basically in nature. You throw something in there, the worms transform it. Then you have like this soil amendment that is super rich. You also get a liquid which you can, use for your houseplants, and your houseplants just love it.
Right.
But if you don't want to go that route, you can have a tumbler. It's a large composter that you can put, outside, or sometimes you can put inside. It really does not smell, by the way. I think a lot of people are afraid of composting, thinking it's going to smell. And it's one of those things I thought myself, when I got started. And composting really surprised me because it really did not smell. And they are also for people that live in small apartments or in small spaces. You can they are composters that you can that are really small and very effective, or very quick at transforming food into the compost. And that's something that you can it's like a small box that you can basically plug under your sink. And then also, with this zero waste lifestyle becoming a movement, so have, a lot of alternatives also have come up on the market. So you have, there is this company in Eastern Europe that has come up with this design. It's a wall planter. So you basically can grow vegetables or whatever, plants in your house, and in the back of it, you do have the worm composter. So as your stuff is basically, as your food scraps are transforming or degrading, it's feeding the plant wall that's in the front of it. I think it's a super smart system.
That's a great idea. What's that called?
And then there are other ones that have made furniture. So basically, you can have your dining table surrounded with worm composting stools.
Yeah. That's really cool. What is that? The name of that company? Can you remember? Otherwise, I'll Google it. But
gosh, okay, hold on. Vermigo, I believe.
Okay, I'm going to look them up. That's amazing. Yeah, well, it's just so important, this work, and it's a really nice. We read a lot of stuff about the political situation in your adopted country, and what you're doing is a nice antidote to some of the thinking that comes from the highest political levels in America about climate change and about what needs to or doesn't need to be done. So thanks for that, and for the inspiration as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's interesting to see that. We started this year, and we actually live in one of the most wasteful counties per capita in the U.S., so one of the most wasteful places in the world. And it's kind of ironic that we started doing this here. The movement is really growing rapidly throughout the world. So my work now is to grow this movement as far and wide as possible. So I give talks throughout the world. I've given speeches in more than 65 countries. I've had the opportunity to speak at the UN, European Parliament, the European Commission, Amazon, Google, IKEA. But in the end, it's showing that there is, this is not just interesting the individuals. It's also interesting large corporations, large organizations. And of course, as this movement is becoming bigger and bigger, no one can ignore it anymore. So there are, large corporations, for example, like, let's say Amazon, who, I've seen that this movement is growing, and they're realizing, well, boy, maybe we should adapt to this. And, when I go into to talk to these businesses, I'm not there, of course, to tell them how to run their business. That's not my expertise at all. But I'm only here to basically present what we've done at home, the decisions that we make as consumers, and then to basically also show them, how big this movement has grown and what people are doing throughout the world, so that they realize that it's in their best interest to, of course, adapt to it. I'm not here to fight these corporations, but rather to show them, hey, these these are the types of the decisions that we're making at home. And if you guys actually, basically you could change your business to cater to people like us. So it's as the movement is growing, it's inspired the opening of unpackaged stores all over the world. It's inspired, even corporations like Unilever or Procter and Gamble to offer products in reusables. And those two big companies announced just a couple months ago that they were going to be selling, for example, Haagen-Dazs in a reusable stainless steel container, or Axe deodorant also in reusable, or they're going to have a reusable type toothbrush where you just have to change the head. So it's really exciting to see, how far it's gone. 10 years ago when I started this, I would have never thought in a million years that, one, we would initiate a movement just from what we were doing at home, but it's also, but to even go as far as inspiring these large corporations to change their practices. It's a huge, huge win.
It is.
Especially when it comes from the US, where change is very, very slow. So I can see that this movement is growing very, very rapidly in Western Europe. It's catching on, though, very, very quickly in Eastern Europe, because, living simply was not so long ago for them. So it's very easy to go back to those things, and because it also makes sense to live simply. But in the US, it's really slow. So in September, I'm going to be doing a speaking tour throughout the US and Canada in a caravan for like a year with my husband, and I really hope to change, to basically shatter the misconceptions associated with the lifestyle, because I think that's probably what's keeping people from adopting it, and hopefully get things moving faster here than it is where you live.
Yeah, well, that's brilliant. And if you ever come to London, let me know, and we'll meet up. We'll do an event here. Look, the question that I ask everybody is, what is one book that you would recommend? I know you recommend in your book quite a few other ones that had a significant impact on you. And also, what is one tip for living with more energy and vitality?
Well, the energy thing is easy. That's what I'm drinking right now. I drink green tea.
Okay.
And that's really, I'm sorry. This is what gets me going every day. And I'm really not picky on my green tea either. I'll just take whatever. But obviously, living simply is also what gives you a lot of vitality, because you eliminate all the noise in your life. And once you eliminate basically all the little things that weigh you down, then it gives you momentum to do the things that matter to you. But the book that really resonated to me and that I refer to very often is Death by Rubber Duck. It's a great book that talks about all the toxic products that surround you, and it's really hidden in everything. And once you read that, then it's really hard to keep poisoning your family, actually. Once you realize the products that, what's contained in the products that you use, or even that you sit on or that you wear, it really changes your outlook on things and on your consumption. And then it really helps you to make better decisions.
That sounds great. Sounds very zestology as well. Bea, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to finishing off your book, and I'm going to encourage people who listen to this to get in touch with you with any changes they've made, or any pictures of them going to the bakery with sewn up pillowcases ready to fill the pillowcase with bread. That's it. Thank you very much to Bea. As I say, I would love to hear from you. If you've been putting any of this into action, send me pictures. Let me know what's going on. I'd really like to hear about it, because I'm looking to kind of put a few of these tips into practice, and I think it would help. I'm also just interested to know if other Zestology listeners, other people in the community, are doing this kind of thing. So yeah, let me know. It's TonyWrighton.com. It's very easy to get in touch via the website, and maybe you want to sign up for the 3 Zesty Things newsletter at the same time. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye to you now. Going to cram a few more experiences into my day. Experiences, not stuff. That's what today is all about. See you next time.